Cool. Yep, my name is Langley. I'm an Aussie from South Australia. I used to work at Heartbreak Studios on games like Fruit Ninja and Major Zombies, but I now work here in Wellington at Pickpock, where I've been designer on Doomsday Clicker and Rival Stars College Football. While I'm normally a designer, I'm going to talk about art. Not really stuff like in-game artwork, but a little more like this. I run the video game art archive, which works to extract artwork from old manuals. Some of you may be too young to remember, but games used to come with a bit of paper called the instruction manual. They'd tell you how to play the game and give you flimsy excuses as to what the story might be. But a lot of these were scanned in so very long ago on the internet and just not really available in very good quality. Enough to read, but not really for much else. Take F-Zero, for example. If I go online and find a scan of the manual for the Super Nintendo, this is the quality you're going to find of poor Captain Falcon. Worthless to anyone who'd really want to use it. But with the right scanning tools and the person crazy enough to take the time, you can make this stuff once again available and useful. An early SNES game like F-Zero has a lot of cool art in it, but really wasn't available online. I was able to scan it in and preserve it for the future use. The manual also has some pretty sweet comics inside it as well. Captain Falcon didn't really go Falcon Punch, he would say Backo. So how do I go about bringing this artwork back to life? And why do I do this? This originally started because of a website called Sega Retro, a wiki site for Sega stuff. Part of the motivation of theirs is to have scans of everything. All versions of both art, box arts and manuals for these games. Australia has some really weird and unique stuff that has only been available from the old days, like this copy of Vector Man, which came in a VHS-sized box, which we had a cheap, unique, flimsy fold-out manual that wasn't really available anywhere else in the world. So I said, hey, I could scan these. Originally, I started using an A3 scanner at Halfbrick, but once I was no longer there, I decided to buy my own, a Brother A3 scanner, which could also help scan in art from old video game magazines as well, which were being archived. So I started scanning this stuff in really, really good quality, and then got a little nostalgic about all the bits of artwork in them. And then I said, hey, this art's really cool, and it's not online at all. I know, I can extract it all and start a blog about it, and 4 years later I'm still at it. I initially started with my own collection of games, but since then I've been using eBay and some sellers, usually in Japan, that have some really cool games for pretty cheap. I buy them in bulk, get all the artwork in them, scan it all in, and then sell it back online, try to make some money back on it. So let's look at how I might extract something. Let's take a Mega Drive game, Assault Suit Lanos, also known as Target Earth in the US, which is a bit of a rare game. It's got some really nice mech artwork in it, but it's a little tricky to get out of here. This looks pretty nice too, but there's also issues with a lot of background noise and some lines that appear over the artwork. In this case, I'll take the staples out of the old manuals and feed it into the scanner. In smaller cases like the original Nintendo, I'll have to put each page into the scanner and actually scan it through. I scan everything in at 600 DPI, which gives us some excellent quality scans. Load this into Photoshop, and let's see what we've got. So here's that mech artwork. Let's cut out the edges a little bit, but there's still a lot to do here. In easy cases, I would be able to use the magic wand tool to select outside, but in this case, I can't really do that. Instead, I'll have to go around the whole thing myself using the polygon lasso tool and select it all myself. This takes a very long time. I'm usually watching Giant Bomb or movies while I'm doing this, so it's fine. In the end, we've got this artwork, nicely cleaned up and extracted. Close up, you'll see some scanning artifacts, but when shrunken down to things like that you might use for YouTube or articles, you wouldn't even notice. This artwork has a little bit of extra work needed. There's some extra lines and stuff and text that's on top of things. But with some quick work using the healing brush tools and clone stamp tools, you can clean it up without having to make anything look awry. And a little bit later, we've extracted that artwork. And after a few hours, I've extracted all this art. This is a little harder than most games. Do people care about Assault Suit Leonos? I don't care that they don't care. I'm just doing this anyway. Now, a lot of the time, this can be quite easy. Games like Super Mario Bros. 3 have white backings and characters art with thick black outlines, so this ends up taking up very little time. This actually made things easier with Photoshop actions. Admittedly, I took a very long time to actually remember doing this, but actions are just a set of actions you can just record in Photoshop for those duties that you'll just repeat over and over and over. In this case, I've set up a paste command, so I can just press Shift F2 to start a new document, paste an image in there, and another one which I'll just select the whole white area, and then it will just expand the selected area and then shrink it back down, which basically just gets everything it needs to, and basically I can just go through this as quickly as possible. So I wanted to go through some of the more fun and interesting reasons why this is worthwhile, and some of my favorite extractions from this. One of my favorite things to do is find something that no one has bothered to really look at. For example, 3D Balls, a bad fighting game that used ellipsoids to make it look like you were playing something in 3D. The game just looked like this, and the cover in America just sort of looked like that. Nothing else really tells you here there might be something worth extracting, unless you go to the Japanese version of the game. So here we have Kronk the Caveman. This is what he looks like in-game. But in Japan, they went the extra mile, and the manual is filled with artwork of really real interpretations of these characters. Those bulging eyes are rethought as a skull that he's wearing. Divine actually looks like a person, and not just something with balls for boobs. And Bruiser is reinterpreted as a crazy-looking strongman. They really tried to keep his giant nose and belly button in this game. And even goes so far in that manual to actually have little comics about the characters. If I didn't dig this out, it would have basically been lost to time. It's not terribly useful, but still fascinating. Crash Bandicoot is a super popular character on the PlayStation, but he actually had a completely different look in Japan. He looks far more plastic. He has sort of Pac-Man style eyes, and Cortex has a much larger N on his forehead. Spyro has also had a similar change. Interesting fact, the Japanese logo kind of looks like it says Ripto, and Insomniac actually used this as the second game's antagonist. And actually got some really cool storyboard art that you would never seen in the Western side of stuff at all. At this point, manuals for PlayStation games in America would basically just be black and white and not really have much art at all. Sometimes it's just extracting art from very popular games, but just not available on anything above 200 pixels high, like Golden Axe, or Metroid 2 on the Game Boy, and its various Metroid evolutions, or the original Super Smash Bros. Artwork on the Nintendo 64, which has a very unique art style for it. This I had to actually extract from the Japanese guide, so it actually was quite hard to get. I also look for obscure sources for artwork. Does anyone remember Zul, the ninja from the Nth Dimension? He was kind of an Amiga mascot for a while, but he came to a lot of old consoles on the 8 and 16-bit days. He was quite popular enough to have a book. Two, in fact. Cool Zul is the one I have. He's apparently cooler than Mario and smarter than Sonic. But the fun thing is that it's completely filled with unique artwork of this character, not from the manual or any other thing at all. This is some of the craziest stuff I've started looking at for that extraction. There's also the case for Lemmings. Yes, Lemmings even had a book, and the entire game is spoken as if they are a collective. So the Beach Lemmings did this or that, and it's filled with unique art, which I'm now sort of restoring. So Ryan, you say, what is all the use of this stuff? Who cares about Blasto here? Well, I've been working with Sega a little bit to help with their retro efforts. I've got a small contract with them on their Sega Forever stuff, which is their mobile, they're bringing old video games to mobile. For example, this is the artwork of Story of Thor, or Beyond Oasis, which I extracted the art for them from the pretty rare Japanese version of the game. and ended up being used for the icon and stickers for the game. If I didn't help them out with this, they'd probably be stuck with probably the American or European version of the artwork, which, let's be honest, doesn't really give you the awesome vibes that the Japanese manual gives you. For those that know me, I know way too much about this blue rodent. Part of the art I've been extracting is basically for content on my other blog, Sonic the Hedge blog. But last year, Cook and Becker released a amazing collected works art book for Sonic the Hedgehog. They went around asking anyone from the fan community if they had any of this really hard to find artwork. And I put my hand up, and you'll find a lot of artwork from the original Sonic manual in the pages of this book. The original designer who drew these would draw these little sketches of the game mechanics to show the artists and the designers how that should actually function in game. And they were put into the manual, and now I cleaned them up, and then they're now quite fun to flip through. But honestly, I just like doing this because they could be used for anything. YouTube videos have used some of the artwork extractions, like the brief history of Bubsy, and that's great. Anyone can use the stuff now that it's available. So who else is doing this kind of thing? The Video Game History Foundation is probably the biggest contributor and was started up just a couple of years ago by Frank Cifaldi. He also works at Digital Eclipse, who works with Capcom on the Mega Man Legacy collections and the upcoming Street Fighter collections, which we're able to scan and preserve some of the amazing artwork of that time and put them into the game's galleries. What they've also been able to do is find a lot of old data discs from the PlayStation 64 or Dreamcast era. At this point, there was no website or to actually get access to the files or get a CD or zip disk of the content, or you'd have to get the CD or zip disk for the contents. Frank's been doing an amazing, lot of amazing work finding this stuff and putting it online. Discs that have artwork for games that will never get re-released or seen again, like Speed Freaks on the PlayStation, or Tonic Trouble, which was a Ubisoft game very similar to Rayman. In some cases, it's been very useful. This image from Sonic Adventure was available online, but at a low resolution, but on the zip disk, they actually found the PSD file, which you can then split up those two renders, and then at the highest resolution they could have possibly been, and there was something that was a file from 1999. Nowadays, most companies have their own asset library sites, allowing people to download the PSDs or PNG files for games coming out. However, we still have to archive this stuff. This stuff doesn't last forever. Even Nintendo's site will eventually revamp themselves and remove old games from their portfolio. Sometimes in the US has different assets from the UK version of it, which is quite frustrating. And, well, some companies don't really exist anymore. So their art is lost to time. Hopefully some sites have kept some of their original artwork available, or someone might find the original zip disk somewhere. But until then, we've got manual scans like what I've been doing. So I have a Patreon, which isn't making crazy money or anything, but it keeps my blogs running and makes me a little bit of money to buy more games and extract more artwork. I find it quite a lot of fun, though time consuming, so if you'd like what you've seen, chuck $1 my way. Thank you.